Also, if I could, Danny did send you a message on Slack that said there's no link.
Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Football, it began simple enough. Line up 11 men on one side, 11 on the other. The team with the ball is the offense. The team without it is the defense. Snap the ball, you run, you collide, and you tackle. But now football is much more. No longer just a game of brawn, it's also a game of brains. This is Bare Necessities.
Good evening, Barflies, Bears fans. Welcome to Bears Necessities. This is Jordan T. Silveira. Welcome to Barroom Network. I am not alone tonight. I do have our director, maestro, president man himself, Aldo Gandia, in the background, when we will be having some interesting talk tonight, just going a little bit of a different week this week because we have the Bears playing on a Thursday night. And just everything's a little disjointed today, and I think we're going to talk about some of that with the Seahawks. But, I mean, we're talking about J2K, Jeremy, appreciate you hanging out. Iceberg Slim, Bruce, Russell, everybody there. Just funny watching. I mean, I don't like to sit there and grieve TV analysts because we all make mistakes. But when I'm hearing Josh Fields instead of Justin Fields, and I'm hearing Leno because the numbers match, listen, we all make mistakes. But it did just feel, from everything, I get it. It's their Monday Night Football practice run. But I've got my wife sitting there who doesn't know much about football going, why does it say M and F on a Thursday? They couldn't have just swapped the M for the T and just tried it a little different. And so, a very unique broadcast. Didn't think that the broadcast was necessarily good, but if you're familiar with watching football, I don't mean to take just a cheap shot, but I don't genuinely appreciate ESPN's broadcasts recently, dating back to when they had Greasy Booger in his little chair. It's just been kind of a mess. So that is what we will be discussing because of the unique advantage of having a game, the Chicago Bears game that we all love, right before this. We're going to make this episode a little bit of a post-game analysis. So for those that are just kind of new to Bare Necessities, and as we get ready to bring our guests in here and we'll talk about it, just want to inform you that this is something we do every Thursday evening. It is 8:30. Usually we're on at 8 p.m. Pacific, West Coast, but getting started a little later today. And just the emphasis is going over just the Bears in general, as labeled the Bare Necessities, talking about the just brass tacks, if you will. So without further ado, Aldo, you want to kind of show up here and show everybody your lovely face and talk about who we have coming on, because I feel so just appreciative of the guest we have today, because it's kind of a long time no see since draft season, and I don't know how I got bestowed with such lucky privileges to have this gentleman coming on.
Well, that's because he is one of the brightest minds that I know in the game of football, and seeing the two of you talking football together is going to be a treat for all of our barflies. So without further ado, let's bring in the co-host of Draft on Tap and one of the new co-hosts of Bear Football, the post-game shows during the season, Danny Shimon. Danny, how are you?
I'm doing well. Wow, what a welcome. I mean, do I owe money to you guys? I mean, what's I feel like I got to pay you guys something for that nice warm reception.
You know how my nose has been growing since I was
No,
what's going on, guys?
I'm going to leave you to it, but I'm going to tell you this. I've got highlights of every Tevin Jenkins play in that first series. So if you guys wanted to analyze his play at right guard for those first 10 plays of that first series, I've got that, and I'll sprinkle in some highlights. And then when we get guys at the podium, we'll break in with that. So have a great.
Jenkins might want to burn that one where he gets bull rushed right back into the Justin Fields flash. But,
It was not good. It was not good.
No, you guys will have a lot to cover, so I'll let you get to it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Well, Danny, as always, I really appreciate you coming on. You deserve such a welcome. But, I got to tell you, let's start off with kind of what I think. Let's give you some time to gloat. How good do you feel about, for months saying, Tevin Jenkins is not a tackle, put his ass at guard, and here we are. He's playing guard. This is your time. Let me hear it.
Well, it's not that I feel good about it. It's just that's something that Neil and I both, when we broke down this tape and where he was coming on the draft, I mean, and we just felt like he was, if you were going to play him, you're going to play him right tackle. He's not a left tackle, the next level. And then what I had heard and what he had separately, Neil had heard, was that, some scouts were looking at him as a guard and projecting his best position could be inside a guard. So, it's just when the Bears drafted him, what I liked about the move is they moved up, they gave up draft capital to go get a player to play a position that I feel he wasn't suited for. So that's where it all started. It's not that I think he's a bad player or that he didn't deserve to be drafted in the second round. It just is the giving up to move up to get him. Because there are other players there at that time that I would want if you're going to, trade up in that second round and give up a third round pick to get. And Tevin Jenkins wasn't one of them. So, and if he had fell to you in the original spot at 53, 54, and you brought him in to play a right tackle or a right guard, okay, I'd get it. But to trade up, give up draft capital and put him in a position that he only made 7 starts in his career at college, I just didn't see it. I didn't see it on his tape. And obviously this coaching staff is not seeing it either.
Sure. I think that those are all good points. I mean, just so we're clear to the chat, I've kind of fought back a little bit with you and Neil, the fact that I didn't think he could play tackle. I thought he could, and your beliefs that he'd be better fitted at guard. I tend to agree with you on one thing. I didn't see a reason to move him to left. He wanted to play there at Oklahoma State, had a little brief tape there, I believe, for a game or two, but why would you sit there and draft a guy and then all of a sudden, and this is just, we don't mean to rehash the Pace situation, but to say, we picked our guy at 39. He's our left tackle. Let us see you without him even taking a snap.
Right.
It just seemed hasty.
You move up, you give up a third round pick, which was, you're a team that's looking to recoup some assets, and you give up a third round pick to go get a guy to put him in a position that he only made 7 career starts at college. And that to me, what wasn't, he wasn't one of the guys I was banging the table for a right tackle in the first place. He was a guy who showed some traits, some possibilities in terms of, bring him in competing. But when I talked to some of the scouts and they said right guard, I'm like, yeah, I can see that probably best suited for him, original. But I give him a shot at tackle. I give him a shot at right tackle and see how he does. And then eventually, if he fails, move him to the right guard. I just did not see him at all playing left tackle. When they traded up and told me he's going to play left tackle, that's when I was like, no, that's not going to happen.
So let me ask you this: in your experience of just kind of watching him in his extremely limited reps last year, but really just Chiefs game when he was playing right tackle, do you feel in a definitive way that Tevin Jenkins has no business playing tackle at any time in the future in the NFL?
I haven't given up totally on right tackle. I just, obviously the injuries have set him back, right? Physically, he's a guy that came in. And the other thing, Jordan, we forget is the Bear told us that they knew about he had a back injury coming out of Oklahoma State, which is something that I had not heard of, but apparently they knew about it. And he still went ahead and we just talked about trade up and all that stuff. But, the injuries have set him back. Obviously he hasn't, has been kind of, limited with that. And the whole thing with training camp this year where he was sitting out and no one knows for sure was he injured? Was there an issue with the coaching staff? Was he being demoted and he didn't like it? Whatever it was, but obviously his career hasn't gone as expected. And one thing I gotta tip my hat to my partner, Neil Stopchinski. He has some sources that told him that the kid just, some of the talk about him at Oklahoma State was he just didn't love football. He wasn't a guy that loved to play the game. He was a guy that was big, was kind of forced into the game. But it is what it is, right? They drafted him. They made that pick. But yeah, in terms of right now, I think he seems to be struggling with his balance. He gets out. Pads are elevated. I don't know if his back is still hurting him or what's bothering him right now. but it just doesn't look right at tackle. So inside of guard, obviously, he's flanked by the center and his right tackle. Now he's got some help there, so he's not so much on an island one-on-one as he would be at tackle. So I think guard would be a position where you can give him a shot, let him kind of develop, get his confidence back, and then if you see him, in a couple months or a year maybe, see him get that confidence back, see him kind of put some positive tape out there, then you can maybe give him in a competition and see what happens at right tackle. But for me last year, Larry Borum played well at right tackle. Now, was he an all-pro? No, but he's a young guy, 5th-round pick that came in and kind of, was being flipped between left tackle and right tackle. And I think he really kind of played well at right tackle. And I think he's done, an admin job in terms of playing right tackle so far. So I think that I think we saw that today when they they pulled the starters. Braxton Jones was gone. I think, and obviously the left side of that offensive line was out, along with Justin Fields and the receivers and all that stuff. But Jenkins and Bourne were still in there, so I think those guys are still fighting for a spot. Obviously, I think Bourne, it comes down to him versus the veteran Riley Reif at right tackle. From what I've seen so far about Riley Reif, just in training camp and some of the clips I've seen in the games, I mean, I just think he might be a guy that could be just a nice veteran insurance policy. I would give Borum that shot at right tackle until he fails it.
I love it. I tend to agree that, I mean, look, in this year, I think it's fair to say, and I don't think I'm bursting bubbles of any Bears fans, but I don't think they're winning a Super Bowl this year. So I think it's okay to say, let's play the kids. Let's see what we have there as we load up with a ton of money and draft capital next year to spend it the right way. And I'm curious if you agree with this. I mean, my genuine opinion of the Riley Reif and Michael Schofield signing was more of a let's raise the basement up to a minimum standard of what we expect,
right,
and hope that the kids can overachieve that so that we don't have to play Reif. But if we do, we understand what the basement floor looks like at these positions.
Right. To me, initially, they were just veterans that were going to come in here and just kind of give them, a competition, give these kids some competition, because, behind them, you have nothing, behind Borum or Braxton Jones or anything like that, before you brought in the Schofields and the Riley Reif. So I think, if Reif does beat out Borum, which I don't right now, I don't foresee it, but if it happens, I think, Reif is a guy that's has battled injuries the last couple of seasons, so it's probably only a matter of time before Borum is in there at right tackle. So why do the flip-flopping? Let's just go ahead and start Borum. Like you said, he's a young kid, acquitted himself well last year in the limited playing time he had. I think he's done a decent job at right tackle here as well. So I'd give him a start. And if he does end up falling flat on his face, then you have a veteran like Riley Reif you can kind of stick in there. But the most important thing Jordan mentioned this year, the record, they're not going to be competing for a championship. The most important thing this year, and I've said it to multiple, people I've spoken with, on the air, off the air as well, is like Justin Fields' development. That is the single most important thing of this year. You can go 6-11. But if Justin Fields is showing progress, if you see him developing as a pocket passer, you see him mastering this offense, you see him getting all these receivers involved. I love the connection with him and Cole Kmet today. You saw that early on in the game. So, we'll get into the offense later on. There's some positive things I saw in the offense as well. So as long as this kid is getting better and you see those glimpses that potential to be that starting quarterback that I believe he is, I think that's all that matters this year. And protecting him has to be your number one, as an organization, your number one priority. You got to make sure this kid is protected and he doesn't get, killed back there behind a ragtag offensive line. And some of the play calling today, again, they're vanilla. They're not game planning right now, but some of the things they showed today really was encouraging, and some of the things that I was expecting to see more of as the season continues.
So, I mean, getting into that, because I think that's what we're all here for, is look, we just watched a Chicago Bears game. Let's talk about it. I tend to agree with you. Look, at the end of the day, brass tacks with this team is it's all about Justin Fields and development. And the way that the game in the modern NFL, the way the game is legislated, is you only go as far as your quarterback takes you. And in this case, this is who the Bears have saddled their cart to. Let's do everything in our power to make sure that he's successful. Speaking of which, what did you think about, I know it's a super small sample size with Justin Fields today, but what did you think about how he performed, how the starting offense performed, the weapons out there? And I mean, even if you'd like, you can talk. I know we didn't talk last week about the Chiefs, but if you have anything kind of carrying over from the Chiefs to Seattle tonight, I'd love to just hear your opinion on it.
Well, the one thing I noticed tonight, as opposed to the Chiefs, I mean, it looked more crisp. Right? I mean, it wasn't obviously perfect, But it looked like they were just a little more synced out there offensively. Now that he did get back Cole Kmet today, who he used, I think it was 2 catches for 31 yards. The first play was that little dump off screen play, which I loved to the tight end Cole Kmet there. He's a pretty good, tough run after the catch, kind of, big bodied receiver goes down. You can see here gets a first down here on that first play. So, some of these plays here, I like the fact that they're going to be using him more in the game in terms of rollouts, getting him out of the pocket, get that moving pocket. There was one play where he did a nice job of getting out of the pocket. Saw he had plenty of space there, was able to flip his hips and throw a bullet on that crossing route, the second level crossing route to Cole Kmet. So I think some of those are some of the plays we're going to see more and more of here. I think this is going to be a run heavy offense initially. I think this is going to be something where they're going to let the running game, and I think they have a very, very talented running back room here. So Treston Ebner is a guy who really has impressed me, the rookie out of Baylor. We'll get into him a little bit later on, but again, just rely on the run game. Let Justin do some of the things he can do in terms of improvising when a pocket breaks down, because it's going to break down. And then just give him some time to be able to make some plays downfield, give him some of those throws. So a lot of rolling out, a lot of half field reads. Option 1, option 2 if they're not open, throw it away or tuck it and run. The kind of things just to kind of groom him into it. Last year was his rookie year. But for me, I'm considering this as rookie year, because a lot of the things and some of the things that they talked about in the broadcast, I don't know if you guys, which broadcast you guys watched, the ESPN broadcast or the local broadcast, but Jordan, you probably watched the ESPN broadcast.
ESPN.
You're out there in the West Coast. So
not a good viewing.
Yeah, it's a little rough. But the one thing that they did mention was Luke Getsy, when he met with the crew, he said that they had to break him down as a rookie and just kind of like teach him formations, teach him defensive formations, and kind of how to call out a defense, how to line up his blocking, how to audible at the line, all the basic stuff that you think he would have learned last season. He had not learned this stuff, so now he's learning it all, and Luke Getsy. So they're kind of like, so for me, this is going to be his rookie year. So we got to kind of take it back and just kind of take it at that level and lower our expectations in terms of what this kid's going to do. Is he going to be a Pro Bowler this year? Probably not. But is he going to show those glimpses, those signs? And I think using his athletic ability on those rollouts, the play action stuff, the RPO stuff that we haven't even seen yet, I think that's where this offense is going to go ahead and you can see some of those positive steps happen as the season progresses.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I think, what's so interesting, and it's something that I'm trying to constantly remind myself too, is slow down with the expectations. And just even, look, it's not even just a Bears thing. I mean, when you look around the league, Trevor Lawrence is basically a rookie considering the stuff he went through last year. Zach Wilson I talk about this all the time, but his quarterback coach died tragically in the offseason before the season started, didn't have a backup, had his struggles too. So, Trey Lance barely got a couple starts. So it really just feels like, just by the way that the NFL works in nature, these quarterbacks from last year that were so heralded as an amazing class are all in their weird ways starting fresh this year with their own unique perspectives. And Justin Fields is no exception to that. I think that what I guess I'm curious to see is, I totally agree with you, Danny. This is all vanilla plays. But for anybody that I would encourage, and Danny, I'm sure you've seen enough Green Bay film at this point. We've got a 2-time NFL MVP over in Green Bay that, go look at the tape. He's done more throws on RPOs, screens, within the short area of the field, 0 to 5 yards downfield, than I think most people would realize. And it felt like there was a lot of that today. And some of it's encouraging. You talk about, Bears fans are so split on Cole Kmet, and it almost feels like, I don't know how you don't watch today and think Cole Kmet's got a real role on this team in the ways that they want to use him. Some of it sounds ridiculous that we're cheering on a tight end screen. But the reality is, under Nagy, we didn't see halfback screens, more or less tight ends
at all. Exactly. Yeah, there were no screens for whatever reason. But for me, and I know that everyone goes to Green Bay with Getsy because that's where he came from. And then you see some of that stuff right now with the quick throws, right? Just getting the ball out of his hands, getting the ball, there's a bubble screen, slip screen to Velus Jones, nice 6-7 yard gain, that little screen to Cole Kmet, these plays where you get the ball in the hands. There was another bubble screen to Darnell Mooney. So get the ball to these receivers' hands, get the ball out of the quarterback's hands, and that way that way you get the ball in your playmakers' hands, see what they can do in the open field, create some plays. But the other thing I want to keep kind of let everyone know, and I've been saying this for the last couple of weeks, is go past Green Bay. Matt LaFleur came from the Tennessee Titans privately. He was offensive coordinator there. So, Arthur Smith is the offensive coordinator, or was the offensive coordinator under Matt LaFleur in Atlanta. I'm sorry, in Tennessee under Vrabel, and ended up going to Atlanta. Look at how they do it. It's a run first, run heavy offense that sets up the play action. You got the rollouts, you got the wide zone plays and all that stuff. So look at that type of example in terms of what to expect with the Bears offense this year. I think you're going to see a lot of 2 or 3 tight end sets. They're going to have a fullback, guys. They're actually going to have a fullback on the roster. They're going to run it from the I formation, which I love. You give David Montgomery a lead blocker, and he's got a chance to gain 5, 6, 7 yards of carry. So I think that's going to be something that we get to look forward to is them establishing that running attack and then building that passing game off of that run.
So then let me ask you this. Do you have any concerns at all 2 games in, understanding that it's vanilla, that at the end of the day, this offense is finding ways to move the ball, stay on schedule, which I think we could obviously break down a lot more. And that's something I'm really impressed with this offense with Justin Fields on, is that, even down to Simeon and Peterman, there's this idea that, look, don't put us back. Don't take a negative play. Find a way to get the ball out, keep the offense on schedule. And that's positive. But do you have any concerns thus far that we haven't seen the offense find the end zone in what is, at this point, I think Fields has 4 drives.
Yeah. Obviously, touchdowns is what you want, but like you said earlier, they're not really game planning here. It's more vanilla. They're just trying, have some handful of plays. They want to go out there and just kind of execute their plays. The one thing I do have to get, tip my hat off to the entire coaching staff is I think they only had 3 penalties for 38 yards for a first-time coaching staff. This team looks like they're well prepared and well coached. Again, it's only 2 preseason games. You can't really draw expectations off of that. But I'm just so far early on. I just think that so far they look like they're a well disciplined, well coached team so far. But in terms of the offense, yeah, you want to see touchdowns. You want to see them put points on the board. But they're not going to go out there and show all their plays. And this is going to be a team that's going to is going to, like I said, it's not going to be very, very open. It's not going to be the greatest show on turf, right? They're not going to be throwing the ball over the field. They're going to be some games where they're just going to be running the ball, pounding that football, and just getting 3 or 4 yards of carry here and there. They might have some drives that stall, but then eventually, once they get that or establish the running game, that rushing attack, then they're going to go off of play action, and then you're going to see them taking some shots downfield. There are some young players here that are making some plays here. I think Isaiah Coulter has had a really good training camp so far. I think he's a guy that has got a real legitimate shot at making the team at receiver. I've said before that this is going to be a team that's going to be churning in terms of its roster after the final cut down. And I think ESPN today mentioned that Ryan Poles talked to them as well and told them this team's going to look way different in 2 weeks than they do now. So I think look for them to make up some acquisition at receiver. Look for them to look for another offensive lineman or 2, probably a defensive tackle or something like that. You're going to have to see what this team's going to look different, but what their final roster constitutes or what it looks like opening week versus the 49ers is going to be totally different than what they look now. But there are some positives that I see. Like I said, Coulter was one of them, right? On offense, obviously the connection between, Fields and Kmet is there. The connection between Fields and Darnell Mooney is there. I want to see more of Velus Jones. We saw some of his explosiveness in that punt return and his kick return, game. But, we want to see some of that, get that ball in his hands on offense, and let's see what he can do as well. I'm talking about some jet sweeps, line him up in a backfield, maybe use him in like a Deebo Samuel kind of role here. Just get creative with what you got here. You might not have the perfect complement of players, but you got some players that have some skill and some ability. Now you as a coaching staff find a way to get them or put them in position to succeed.
Absolutely. And I think that's really what you're highlighting too, is that right now this offense is so vanilla that we haven't even broken into the speed option, the read option, the zone read, the RPO game. That's really, if we want to talk about, kids try to open their presents on Christmas, we're still waiting for that because they're not willing to show their hand and give Velus a reverse or a jet touch pass.
Right. Or an RPO play. I've yet to see an RPO play with Justin, tucking in and running it.
Yeah. No. It hasn't happened. So it'll be curious to see. A little bit back to the offensive line I'd like to ask you, because admittedly that was the concern a little bit I have. And I think we're simpatico there. And this belief that I think that's my own personal philosophy, but a quarterback is a guy, if you have a quarterback that's a dude, and we all think Justin Fields is, he's a guy that can elevate talent around him via his receiving options. maybe Isaiah Coulter's not a household name. Maybe he's not quite Terry McLaurin, but you can get something out of these guys the way that, for example, I mean, I like to bring up Andrew Luck did it with a guys like Donnie Avery. Sam Bradford did it with guys like Kenny Britt. I mean, guys that weren't exactly all-stars. And the question becomes at this point, can you find a way to keep him upright? And that was a little bit of a concern I had today, as we saw Justin on the move a lot, but it felt like when he had to sit in the pocket, there was just no time and no space to operate. Does that worry you or concern you at all, Dave?
Oh yeah, it does. It does concern me. It's something that I am worried about. I think the interior of the offensive line needs to get stronger. Obviously, I think with the starting center being hurt right now, that doesn't help. I mean, Mustafa's out there, and I know he's a veteran who's played the last couple of seasons, but obviously you see him kind of getting bullied back there again, like he has in previous seasons. We saw Tevin Jenkins. I think was it a second or third play of the game where he gets bullied back into the lap of the quarterback, and he feels has to go ahead and scramble and kind of get away from that pass rusher. So the interior of offensive line I think is really, really struggling so far. I think, in terms of the tackles, that's always our biggest concern. I think Braxton Jones has come in and acquitted himself real nicely. And I think he's won that starting left tackle job. And I talked about earlier about right tackle. I think Larry Borum is the guy that I would give the opening shot to and see what he does there at right tackle. So, that right guard I guess left guard, Cody Whitehair has kind of cemented himself there as a veteran. So center until the injured player comes back. And Patrick, I forgot his first name, but
Lucas Patrick.
Thank you. Until he comes back, and then what right guard? Is it going to be Schofield, a veteran, or is it going to be a kid like Tevin Jenkins? We'll see how that gets short up. Or are they going to bring someone in off the street? Someone that's going to get cut or traded for to go ahead and get that position solidified. But the interior of the offensive line is a concern for me right now.
Sure. Okay, so let's talk about defense a little bit, considering that, I mean, obviously, if we're talking about a game where the Bears found a way to score points, and up until the very end when it became somewhat of a just don't let them win the game and let's get out of here healthy, the Seahawks were held to 3 points. What did you see from that first team defense? No Brisker tonight, but obviously Kyler Gordon gets his first look. Still no Roquan. Do you have any concerns there? Any positive or benefits that you really walked away with after tonight?
Well, I mean, obviously, I would love to see Roquan back in there and playing because I think this defense is tailor-made, and they're going to move him to the will linebacker position. This defense is tailor-made for him. I think he can really, solidify himself as an all-pro player in this type of system. So that's one thing I would like to see him back on the football field. In terms of the defense overall, I mean, it's what we expected, right? They're going back. We're going back to the Lovie Smith days, right? Guys flying on a football field, rallying to the football. You see that with this, the young defensive players. You see these guys flying all over the football field, making these gang tackles and stuff like that. And I like the press rush from the edge guys, right? Robert Quinn didn't do much, but then you brought in some of the other guys, and they were, and then the fourth quarter, the kid Kamara was flying off the edge. Dominic Robinson, the 5th round pick, who I'm high on in terms of his potential, future potential as a defensive end in this league. I think it really, again, provided some nice pressure there as well. So I think that front four, and we saw some of that, that middle linebacker coming up and mugging that A gap, like Urlacher used to do back in the old days, Lovie Smith days. We saw that as well. So we're just going back to those Lovie Smith days. Again, this defense is susceptible to those inside quick slant passes. So that middle of that defense is where it's going to be attacked by opposing offenses. So that's where you need a guy like Roquan Smith to kind of, with that speed, the athletic ability, to be able to roam there, maybe jump some routes, and maybe quickly, if anything underneath, rally to the football and make a tackle. So that's where he'll come in there and kind of eat up all those tackles. So this is a defense. Again, I think they're well coached so far, and I think they're disciplined, and that's what you got to be in this defense. You got to stick to your assignments. You got to stick to if you're assigned to the B gap, you got to stick to the B gap. You cannot really freelance here with this defense. It's so much sound, assignment sound. So I think so far so good. The one player that really caught my eye, during training camp and the first couple of games, unfortunately got hurt today, is Matt Adams, the linebacker they got from the Colts. He's predominantly known as a guy that's a special teams guy. But I think he's been making plays both in training camp and in these couple of games. I think he got hurt. It didn't look good. They were kind of holding his arm there as he's walked out. So hopefully it's not a broken wrist or broken, forearm or anything like that. So we'll see what that reports come out with. But, a guy that to me, Jordan, I don't know how you feel about this, but I think a kid that's already made this team as an undrafted free agent is Jack Sanborn. Now, just on special teams alone, I think this kid has made the team already at linebacker. He's going to be one of the guys they carry on the 3-man roster because the way he plays on special teams, and I think he's solidified his position. He's not too shabby on defense either. He's a guy that doesn't have all the athletic gifts in the world, but I think this guy has definitely made the team, in my opinion.
No, I agree. I love that because let's talk about Sanborn a little bit. It's interesting you talking about Matt Adams going down. Let's not forget too that Caleb Johnson, another linebacker, went down tonight. So they're becoming thinner and thinner at the position. Javin White last week torn ACL.
Yeah.
Roquan's absence is starting to become more felt, and then we're talking about guys like Sanborn, which they have more of a reason now than ever to continue up. It looks like Aldo wants to go over the press conference here a little bit, so I guess we can continue on the Sanborn talk here in a second. I guess let's see what Coach Eberflus has to say.
Possession there. So that was good. And then in the third quarter, we came out. We had a nice defensive stop, created a short field, played complimentary football there, and then drove the ball down and scored another touchdown there to start the second half. So that was really one of our goals that we wanted to accomplish, and I think we got that done. Some really good plays in special teams. We had a couple of good explosive returns. Velas had a really nice punt return. Simba had a nice kick return. That was really good. And it's not just those guys. It's the guys that are blocking for them. The whole football team, the whole team that's out there did a nice job. And it's Hightower did a really good job of coaching those guys to do it the right way. So we're excited about that as well. And then, a lot of guys played. We had a lot of guys that played. They're trying to make the roster. We still have a lot of battles open going forward. And we're excited about moving forward into this week. We have 2 days coming up. Players are day off tomorrow. We have 2 days coming up of practice. We'll get these corrections cleaned up from this game, and then another day off. And then we're really going to work into for the Cleveland week. That's going to treat that like a game week. So we're going to have an in-season Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and an in-season Saturday, and then play the game on that next Saturday. So we're excited about getting that done with our players to go through the process with them the first time in a game week situation for that week. So with that, I'll open up to questions.
Now, what did you like about the first team offensive drive, and specifically how it fit kind of Justin's strengths with some of the play actions?
No, I think that's good. When you can run the ball, which we've done a good job of, in spots, where we can do that. That's where it really creates the play action passes, and the movement passes, and we do a good job with that. He does a really good job with the movement passes, the play actions, in pocket, out of pocket, and be able to deliver the ball. So we're excited about that.
Where did you see improvement in Justin's game this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's a small sample size. We're talking about 9 plays and a penalty, so 10 plays. So I thought the operation was good. His preparation was great. He handled the offense the way we wanted him to. Had a nice drive and scored the field goal. So I think it's progress. And again, I see more progress in practice sometimes. Where his footwork's getting better, his delivery when he feels pressure, how he slides in the pocket and delivers the ball, that's getting a lot better too. So he's improving every single day.
Coach, how did you like Velas during the concert?
I liked it. He's fast for sure, and he's explosive, and we're that's a challenge for him, because he's a rookie, and he's going to have to come in there and show guys what he can do, and I think he's up for the challenge.
What did you think of how the O-line played today? I know you've been doing a lot of shuffling with your offensive line. How did you feel like that?
Yeah, I thought it was solid. I don't, it's hard to really evaluate that sometimes, in the scrum there. When you look at the tape on the plane, I'll get a better feel for that. But overall, I felt really good about it.
You talk a lot about this gives you guys a chance to go through the operations of football. Did you feel like that was smooth with Luke calling plays and getting the offense going?
Yeah, that's been great. Our guys have been really good on the headset. It's about having calm and clear communication on the headset. And I think when you have that, and it's got to be effective communication. So who's talking to who and when, and we've had that the first 2 games. And I think the operation of that's been really good. Communication from everything, from what units going on the field, if we're going to go for it, what situations are coming up. We're always staying to play ahead. So that's been really good.
We decided to what Justin's going to do in the next preseason.
Oh, we're going to look at that. We're going to look at that. We'll evaluate our football team and see where we are. I'll have a coordinators meeting sometime tomorrow, and we'll get everybody's opinion and go from there.
On the topic of communication, what went into the decision to not challenge that incompletion?
Yeah, so on that one, that's a good question because we, a couple of coaches on the sideline thought it bounced on the ground. We got one good look upstairs, and that was it. So we didn't have a second look at it, so we just decided just to let it go. In real time, in a real game, maybe I would have thrown it in there, but we didn't have a second look.
Yeah. With your defense, until kind of the last 5 minutes there, your defense had 17 points in 7 quarters or whatever it was.
Mhm.
How can you tell whether the scheme is coming along the way you want it to when admittedly, sometimes you're playing threes against threes or twos against twos or whatever it may be?
Yeah, I think really you evaluate practice. It all starts in practice. You'll see it first in practice, the execution of the calls, the speed. And then in the game, you want to see the hitting and the tackling. We want to be able to show the intensity of how we hit, how we knock things back, and how we tackle. So I thought that was solid today. That always can be better. And our strip attempts have to be better. We got to get more calls. We got to cause more fumbles, take away more, the ball more. So we'll get after that this week.
Did Kyler have a
Yes, he did.
peanut punch there?
Yep. Yeah, he sure did. Yep.
What do you see in him? This is from first NFL action.
Yeah, it was a small sample size. I'll have to look at the tape. To be honest, I don't have a feeling one way or the other right now.
When a guy comes home.
Okay. Well, I figured, we were just kind of talking about defense here, and although I appreciate you throwing that up there, nothing I would say that's too revolutionary. I guess we'll talk about that briefly with Eberflus. One thing I thought that was just, you're talking about this coaching staff just feeling like a breath of fresh air as far as their professionalism. And for those not aware, typical NFL week, that's what's so impressive about how the Bears performed tonight. Let's look at the reality. This was a sloppy game, short week. I think Seattle looked completely out of it playing at home, and you're talking about the Bears, who by all accounts played on Saturday, had a rest day on Sunday, back in practice, hard work on Monday. Who knows the speed on Tuesday? You're flying out on Wednesday, got to play on Thursday. So for them to really show up to that, but then hearing Flus already having that plan in the background of, look, this is now going to allow us to simulate what this is going to feel like in real season when we're having that Thursday night game against, I think it's the Commanders in like week 7 or so. And that's just insightful, enjoyable to hear. As Danny, you've kind of alluded to, this regime just feels like they've got their head on straight and know what they're trying to do and build towards.
Well, the 0-0 in regular season, so right now, so they're unbeaten, right? So they're all, everything sounds good right now. But no, it's not. All kidding aside, it does. Like I said, I mentioned earlier, only 3 penalties for 30 yards in a preseason game. Those are like what in the first 5 minutes of a game from under Matt Nagy. So that's really impressive again for a new coaching staff. They do look like they're well coached. Though a couple of things I want to touch on with what Coach said there in the press conference. Something I want to talk about in defense is the one thing I keep alluding back to the Lovie Smith defense, but the one thing he touched on as well is I don't see them raking at the ball, trying to poke it out, the peanut punch, whatever. I know they caused 1 fumble today, but I think the Seahawks recovered. But it's something that you have to continue to kind of coach in them and just say, all right, keep going at the ball, cause turnovers. And the other thing was, and I know it was his first NFL game, and Kyler Gordon to me, coming out of Washington, I thought he was an outside corner. I didn't see him really being a guy that's going to line up in the slot. And again, I'm not making any judgments on him. I think the kid's a talented player. I think he's got a bright future at outside corner opposite of Jalen Johnson. I just think in a slot it's going to be tough for him. So we'll see how that goes. But he had a rough game. There was a missed tackle. A couple times he got beaten inside on slot. So we'll see how that goes. But again, it's his first game. But something that I want to see a little bit better showing with him. Next week versus Cleveland, and then obviously, in the regular season. But the one thing that Coach didn't touch there was, I know he said they're going to go through a regular, game week in terms of preparation, but he didn't mention, unless he might mention it after we cut away from him, but is how much will the starters play? That's what I'm curious about. Typically the last preseason game, a lot of these starters don't even get dressed really. So we'll see. I'm curious to see if he'll allow these guys to go ahead and play another quarter, play a half, or don't play at all. So that's one thing I'm gonna be curious, because I think they need to go out there and play at least a handful of plays, whether it's a half a quarter, or a half. I think they got to get into a rhythm. They got to go out there and they got to, play together. This is Cole Kmet's first action. This is Velus Jones' first live game action. The guys got to get together before you put them against the 49ers week 1 and expect them to go out there and beat that, a team that's by many predicted to be, contending for, a championship possibly. So, that's the thing as I hope that they go out there and let them play the starters, play at least a quarter next week.
No, I think you have a good point. I mean, really, that's what's so interesting to me. And I'm curious, I imagine you probably feel the same way. When you look at this game, it felt very much just, again, a clear observation. When you're only playing your starters for 1 to 2 series, it really felt like what this game was about is let's really evaluate the bottom level of the roster to see who's worth keeping around, who are we pushing to the street. Let's get a chance to evaluate this last game, see if we can bring in a couple street free agents if there's that opportunity. And then with that shortened amount of play time for the starters, it's imperative now that next week is live bullets for as long as you feel comfortable going in preparation for what's week 1.
Right. And then one thing we found out is that this bottom half of this roster isn't really good, and I think we all knew that coming into training camp. So a lot of guys out there making some mistakes. I think they picked up 2 guys off of free agency this past week. John Alexander, linebacker, was one of them, and he was out there making some plays, but also, there was a couple times where he got turned around in coverage. So again, he's only been here for less than a week, so I'm gonna give him some slack there. But this bottom half of the roster, like I said, Ryan Poles told ESPN crew today that it's going to look totally different in 2 weeks. So I think this is going to be a team I expect to be very active at the waiver wire. I see them making multiple pickups, maybe even a couple of trades here and there, just to kind of fill in some of those gaps in terms of depth. Because once the starters go out, it's pretty slim pickings.
Yeah, I mean, I know you got to get out of here soon, Danny. So we'll try to wrap up this post game analysis, but. I mean, I'd love to kind of pick your brain on what you thought about Richard Hightower, special teams coordinator, his performance through 2 games. Because, I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but teams play is critical to a team's success.
That's the one unit I'm very high on. I mean, from last week to this week, the coverage was pretty. Obviously, that onside kick at the end of the game. I mean, Pete Carroll, really, it's a preseason game. You're calling timeouts with less. It's like, come on, you call them timeouts at the end of the game, and you do onside kick, but whatever. Right? That's Pete Carroll being Pete Carroll, but. I mean, in terms of the special teams, man, coverage-wise, I think they've been excellent. These first 2 weeks, we talked about the big return by Velus Jones, and also Webster had a nice kickoff return as well. So, that's with a team that's going to be challenged to score points offensively. Obviously these big plays on special teams is going to be huge for you. This is going to be something that Velus Jones, another option he's going to give you in terms of as a punt returner. So, definitely very, very encouraged by special teams. I think, both games, first game and this game, I think they've been pretty good. And I think that's a very, very good sign for Coach Hightower. So very, very impressed with that unit there.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that what we've seen is, and that's what's so surprising, is whether it be Velus Jones or Nsimba Webster. I mean, Daz, I know, had a muffed punt today, and they talked about it on the broadcast about a guy hit on.
That was his guy got it right into him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've seen some real promising looks. And look, I mean, at the end of the day, you want your team's unit to look steady Eddie. Hey, let's make sure we're kicking field goals. We're not missing them. There's no blocked punts. And Trenton Gill last week, it looked amazing as the punter, just always pinning.
Punter looks good. Yeah.
I mean, we talk about an offense that they may struggle and have trouble putting it together. Then at least let's help positionally your defense by pinning them back. And
right. I think right now. Yeah, after 2 games, and it's only 2 games, preseason games, but I mean, I'd say that in terms of if I rate the teams, right, whichever are for me right now, special teams is ahead of the defense. Defense comes in next, and then obviously the offense is third. So, we'll see. Obviously, the offense needs to pick up the pace there. If they pick up the pace, if the offense can score about 17 to 20 points a game, defense gives you solid play, and then you have a special teams unit that can give you coverage. It's not going to be very exciting, but it's going to be something that's going to keep it competitive into these football games. So like things like that. When the Seahawks muff a punt, you're right there. You jump on top of it and you roll into the end zone for a touchdown. So that's another kid. Elijah Hicks is a draft pick. So this draft class so far has acquitted themselves real nice. Talk about the Braxton Jones, a 5th round pick, playing tackle, be a starting left tackle. We talk about Dominic Robinson, another mid late round pick. Being a future possibly pass rushing defensive end. So and then we got, the kid Brisker and Gordon. I think Brisker was, did I miss it, or Brisker did not play today?
No, he didn't play tonight. And
Yeah.
I'm very curious what's going on there because, I mean, listen, it's not the first time you've seen a player with a previous injury continue to keep a brace on or something of that sort. But I thought it was very telling last week that, look, it's been, I mean, I'm sure you know this, going back to Penn State, he played with a poor shoulder all last year.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was very strange for him to come out in his first Bears game with that same shoulder brace, indicating that, are we still having any issues with it? And then he wasn't practicing this week, didn't play. Just a little bit concerning. I mean, look, with Gordon and Brisker, they've looked like they can be promising picks, but there's been a little bit of a concern about how often are they practicing? Are they playing? What's going on with the absences? So be curious to see how that plays out.
Yeah, hopefully it's nothing serious. It's just a minor thing. Like, I know, he played with that brace at Penn State. I think it's just something that he became comfortable with more so than out of necessity, out of need. I don't think he needed to wear it, but we'll see how that goes. So yeah, I mean, that's the one thing right now is encouraging his special teams, and then again, defense. I think it just continues to get better and better. Now we just got to wait for the offense to pick up the pace.
Sure. Well, Danny, I know we're getting close to the end of your time here. I want to make sure that I give you an opportunity to not only plug anything that you're working on via Barroom, Twitter, or anything else, but in general, any final closing takes that you have that you'd like to impart on the audience.
No, just glad to be able to join you tonight. Talk a little bit about this game. Again, preseason game number 2. He's undefeated. Coach he's undefeated. He's 2-0. I'm not sure how much we can take out of this, but all you want to see is progress. You want to see the team get better. I think we saw some of that with the offense today. Again, infusing Cole Kmet there. Some of the young guys that are some of this rookie class is really coming on, in my opinion. Obviously, we saw Velus Jones, his first live game action today. He didn't do it much on offense, but he did on special teams, and you saw that burst, that speed, that electric, playmaking ability he brings to this team. Treston Ebner, that running back that from Baylor, I think he really impressed me. What impressed me more, he's a guy that was known for his speed and for his pass catching ability out of the backfield. But today he did a lot of in between the tackle type of running, lowering his pad level, finishing his runs. And that's something that really stuck out to me with him. Talk about Jack Sanborn, who's an undrafted free agent. I think he's probably made this team as a linebacker, it's definitely on special teams and probably for his play as well. So, this class is coming on. Kyler Gordon was his first game, looked a little rusty. So we'll see how hopefully he improves. Brisker had a pretty good first game last week against the Chiefs. So, this first rookie class is shaping up, so far early on, to be a highly competitive in a draft class is going to possibly contribute some to this rookie season. So that's something to look forward to. I mean, and now next week, we talked about, how they just mentioned they're going to use it as a game week. All right, let's see how long the starters play. I think both you and I agree that they need to play substantial amount. I'm not saying a whole game, obviously, but maybe a quarter or quarter and a half, just to get that feel and then get them ready for the 49ers. So there's some positives here. Definitely looking forward to seeing what comes up here next week versus Cleveland.
Sure. And then finally, where can we find you? What are you working on? What do you have going on in the background? As I know you're a busy bee, always scouting and staying up to date on.
Right. So college football season, my other season starts in a couple of weeks. So I'm excited about that. Got some games ready to break down some film here. But I'm glad that I'm going to be joining Bear Football, the post-game show here on the Barroom Network. I'll be joining John Buffone and Tyler Ellis after the game, and we'll be bringing that passion, that fire, the muscle, the hard criticism, and I'm sure we'll get into a couple of back and forths there as well. So I'm glad to be joining the guys there to talk Bear football immediately after the game and talk with our fans and get their reaction as soon as the game ends on Sundays or Mondays or Thursday nights. So excited, and then of course Draft on Tap will be back later on this fall. Once we get into probably the tail end of the college football season, we'll have some more tape on this current class and some of the junior players that could be possibly coming out. So, getting you guys prepared for next draft class, and of course the Bears. It's going to be a big offseason next year. I know the season hasn't even started yet. We're talking about next offseason already because of the cap money that they're going to have available, and because of they're going to have a full allotment of draft picks this year. So it's going to be a huge offseason next year. But let's see what happens with this season.
We're waiting. We're skeeving.
I know, right? Already.
Awesome. Well, Danny, thank you so much for joining us on Bear Necessities. I sincerely appreciate your insight, your knowledge, and you are always welcome back. It's been a true joy, and you have a wonderful evening.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm always I'm glad for your success, and yeah, whenever you need me, just give me a call or shoot me a text. I'll be on for you.
Dan, you're the man. I appreciate it. You have a wonderful night. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Good night. All righty. Well, thank you so much to Danny Shimon. Always just a savant with his knowledge, his insight. I appreciate it. Chat, Barflies, I hope you're enjoying this as well. As Aldo know, I mean, it's 11:16 for all you Central Time fans. We're talking past midnight for you East Coast people like Cliff down in Florida. Aldo's a little bit of an old man. I'm poking fun at you, Aldo, so we won't keep you for too long. But yeah, I figured we'd talk just a couple questions here that we didn't get to touch on. But I mean, J2K, it's funny, we often think about the same thing. Specifically in regards to Kyler Gordon, I thought that this was poignant too. And I mean, I don't mean to promote myself too much, but if you follow me on Twitter, I've been trying to put together a top 10 takeaways after every game. That's on Twitter currently. You can find that. This is actually a topic I discussed pretty much exactly as Jeremy's talking about here, which is I think that there's some good and some bad regarding Kyler Gordon playing strictly nickel today. In many ways, let's be very clear, nickel corner is one of the hardest positions to learn to pick up to play. You have to be a versatile player that you're covering the entire route tree as a nickel corner. We're talking, look, you don't have a boundary or a sideline to help guide your routes. You have to be responsible for everything, push calls, etc., carrying vertical routes. And you're also responsible for fitting the run inside the box as that overhang defender. You may be responsible for setting the edge and containing, for blitzing, covering curl to flat, being responsible to kind of carry that cloud coverage. It's very tough. And so in many ways, I want to commend Kyler Gordon. If the coaching staff thinks that he should only be at nickel, that speaks really highly to their evaluation of his talent, his skill set. But Jeremy, as you're talking about too, I was quite surprised that they didn't leave him out on the boundary for at least a few plays. I kind of agree with Danny. I think that he can play nickel, but I do think, and I always projected that, hey, let him be that outside guy with his athleticism and let him just bully guys as a press corner. I know he can play some zone. I actually think he may be a little better in zone, but let him use that athleticism to kind of bully guys to the sideline and then use that athleticism, as we've seen in college, to make some interceptions. So I thought it was a very interesting tell. What that tells me, I guess I gave you the good about what they think about him. If there's a bad part about him playing nickel, it tells me that at least in this game, they certainly didn't feel comfortable with whoever else they had at nickel after him, which I believe in this game it was Duke Shelley. I don't have any issue with Duke Shelley, but we know what he looks like as a player thus far I think if you're going to talk about the Bears and their lack of success, I don't think that you can put a lot of that on Desai or Fangio or even Pagano in some respects. So I think that as much as I would tell you to hold off on your evaluation of offensive players, I don't think that you can necessarily apply that to defensive talent. So I think it's a little bit concerning they didn't feel comfortable with who they had at nickel behind him. And then when you actually consider what we saw with the Chiefs game versus this game, you saw a scenario where in the Chiefs game, they ran a ton of big nickel. Big nickel, for those not familiar, that means that in the slot, you're playing another safety, a bigger body. Some of that makes sense when you have a Travis Kelce there playing the slot, a Marcus Valdez Scantling. But I also think it's interesting that this is a different game plan where we didn't see a ton of big nickel today because Brisker's out. In some respect, too, I think I'd like to talk about the absence of Brisker because to me, that was very apparent. We're talking about early in the game, if you want to go back and watch, I've been curious to see, because one of the things the reason I felt so bullish about Jaquan Brisker when he was drafted, I really believe that this is a scenario where he was almost a slept-on safety because I thought he moved forward as well as he moved back. One of the most comfortable players playing in the box but also falling back. And we're talking about defensive schemes and middle field open, too high shells in this world, where a lot of defensive coordinators believe it's easier to have our guys play down on top of something and cap vertical routes and play coming downhill as opposed to playing middle of the field closed and having to ask a guy to come back and play backwards. We've not seen that issue early, especially last week where they had Brisker buzzing around in the box. The question I've had is sometimes that can get stale. If I'm an offensive coordinator and I see that the only guy that you buzz down is Brisker, or occasionally you'll play some big nickel and it's DHC, then I can almost always guarantee that Eddie Jackson is going to be playing the deep half or playing that center field role. What I was curious to see is with Brisker out, were we going to see them rotate Eddie down? And the answer to that is we did see, indeed, Eddie Jackson being rotated or rolled down into the box. The results, though, are my issue. I didn't necessarily think that you saw Eddie Jackson acquit himself very well. And look, that's not his game. Part of the job of the coach is to make sure that you're putting the square peg into the square hole, not trying to shove that square peg into a round hole. And sometimes you have to do that because of injuries. And I certainly don't think that Eddie Jackson looked like a total mess. Just that that's not his game. There was a play where, thank God, he found a way to secure a tackle by just ankle biting and nipping at the ankles and finding a way to trip the guy up for another guy to come in and make the play. But that's what we talk about. When you have to have one of your safeties buzz down into the box, into the trash, you're going to have to fit the run. And that has been a consistent issue that we've seen with Eddie Jackson, where just not a guy that likes to get dirty, tackling, getting into the mix of putting his face mask into somebody. And it's created a little bit of a concern to me that if Brisker goes out, if Crookshank's not available for whatever reason, Crookshank's not playing, and you have to ask Jackson to buzz down in order to keep an offense honest, it does create some concerns about, is Eddie Jackson a liability down in the box for you? So I think that that's kind of my immediate takes. I mean, we can talk all day and night about 35 Jones, the corner, getting beat. I will touch a little bit on that because I'm going to poke a little bit of fun at people that were giving me a hard time on Twitter because I was a big fan of Tyree Gillespie, fourth-round pick last year for the Raiders, just got traded to the Titans for a seventh-round pick. And a lot of people were telling me, look, the Bears have enough safeties. And I tend to agree there's depth. But an issue that I think we've seen in the Chiefs game as well as this game now, and to be clear, I think it's much more of an instincts issue. Safety is a very hard position to play. You're the last line of defense with navigating traffic and understanding your reads and your cues and your responsibilities. But I think now we've seen two games where some of these hole shots, honey shots, and essentially these two high shells where you have that low defender, that high defender, and then you're fitting it right in the middle. You need a rangy safety to get over there and to wall it off. We saw, it wasn't caught, but there was a beautiful deep ball from Seattle that ended up I want to say it was Bo Melton. It landed in the hands, and he didn't secure his feet in bounds. But I'm watching Elijah Hicks working to get over there. And as I said, watching his tape from Cal, he looked like he had range. But for whatever reason in two games now, I'm not seeing that range. It looks like he may be playing a little bit slow. And that's the stuff that'll get you cooked with these quarterbacks that understand you're rotating safeties. You've got to be on your P's and Q's as you're playing your responsibility. And if not, I'm going to gut you by looking off and then hitting it back in a hole shot. So that was a bit of a concern I had on the back end. Okay, I'm trying to think of anything else before we kind of move on to just the general. As you know, I want to talk some Hard Knocks because Hard Knocks is a favorite to me. And then Aldo knows we talk about production value of Hard Knocks. We may not always agree on the content, but touching a little bit on that. As far as the offensive line, I didn't want to talk to Danny about this. We just didn't have the time. I think Tevin Jenkins looked phenomenal at right guard. I don't know. I should pump my brakes a little bit. I don't want to say phenomenal. I don't think he's Quentin Nelson out there. But I think that you saw a player that by far produced more displacement and movement in the run game than any of the starting offensive line. And Aldo's doing such a good job directing here where he's going to show it up as we're going through here. I mean, I'm going to take control of this a little bit, Aldo. Just for those, I mean, I imagine that most Barflies know, but 76 is Tevin Jenkins. That's your right guard. On the very edge here on the outside, it's Larry Borum. But as we're going through the tape here, we can look at Tevin Jenkins. I mean, he's got a nice deuce block here with Larry Borum. So I want to be clear. I always expect if you got 2-on-1, that's a winning business model. I would hope they're able to generate some displacement off the ball. But as you can see there, I mean, this is that tight end screen. We're talking about a play where Tevin Jenkins is critical in withholding his guy from getting to Fields too quickly where he has to rush the screen pass, but also set it up and sell it so that nobody is tipped to the fact that Kmet is coming back. Look, Kmet's sitting there faking like he's blocking at the bottom of your screen to then turn around and prepare for the screen. And Tevin Jenkins has got his guy so engaged, and we love to see that. I mean, we're talking about hands in the chest pads here, driving him up to the neck. There's no way that guy, and that's your closest point of contact from this angle. It's very easy to say, okay, well, he could just break off and come and ruin the play. Tevin Jenkins is doing a great job there, walling his guy off and making sure it doesn't become an issue. So we move along here. This is Well, this is just a replay of that, so let's move along. Okay, let's back it up just a little. Jeremy's saying, did Mustafa play? I don't recall seeing Mustafa. He's essentially their starting center. And, well, I guess, yeah, there he is, 67 Mustafa. So there's your starting center. But that's what I was saying. He's your starting center. He wasn't sticking around beyond what he had to. So there's Tevin Jenkins there in a pass set. Now, this is, I mean, we're going to stop it here because this is what I wanted to talk about with Tevin Jenkins, with Danny. And, I mean, Danny and I could, and Neil, for example, could probably talk about Tevin Jenkins for hours. He's a guy I'm fascinated by. I think I had a huge crush on him coming out of the draft. And it's why I was so excited that he ended up a Chicago Bear. In respect to tackle, watching the college tape, and anybody, if you want to go and you can find it, I mean, I know Brett Coleman had a great video on Tevin Jenkins when he was coming out. His pass pro, I don't want to say it was a liability, but it's shown to be a liability in the NFL. But the reason I felt okay with him at tackle is that Tevin Jenkins does struggle with speed rushers. That's the reason why I kind of talked on Barfly Tailgate this week, that if you're seeing that he has an issue with getting to the edge and setting the arc, then move him inside where he's flanked by a center and a tackle. And when you look at Tevin Jenkins at Oklahoma State, the reason I felt okay with him at tackle is that in pass pro, he did a great job of, one, getting off the snap quicker, which allowed him to set up for anybody coming at him. And while I don't think he looked necessarily incredibly natural in pass protection, I thought that he did a great job of flashing different tools and techniques to deal with pass rush. We're talking about a flash technique where you're just throwing a hand out to try to get a response from a defensive lineman, and then following that up with a fork or a Hamilton for long arms where, look, that arm's coming in, you're pushing it up. Talking about a snatch move. Okay, if they're getting into my chest, I'm just going to sit there and snatch them and push them down for a pancake. So I thought that he had all of the necessary tools to play on the outside. And that's where I call me crazy. I mean, I had a shitty take on Braxton Jones tonight, but a situation that I think about, Tevin Jenkins, is that I really believe it's a confidence issue. Let him get his strength back. Let him get his confidence related to his back in order. If he can get that going, he may be worth giving a tryout at right tackle. But look, we're talking about guard here. And the reason I bring this up is because if there's an area that I think Tevin Jenkins struggles with at the moment, it's pass pro. And I don't think that there's such an alarming thing where, look, he doesn't look like a turnstile. It's not like guys are just blowing past him and he's completely useless. But I paused it here because even as we're looking, the one thing that you want to make sure you're doing, especially on the inside, and although I don't know if you're saying Tevin scares you or if I scare you, but it's a situation here where when you're looking at Tevin, you want to make sure, especially on the inside, we're not overextending the arms. If we're overextending the arms, sure, is it possible for you to be like me in this camera where I'm giving you this odd angle where I'm sitting back and I've got my arms extended? Sure. But the natural reaction is that if you're shooting or extending your arms, you want to lean forward. You're trying to grab something. And that's a little bit of my concern here. Let's just look at the example. Now, to be clear, nobody else is contacting the offensive lineman here. Tevin is the first to contact. But look at this scenario. When you look at Braxton to Whitehair to Mustafa to Borum, they're not in a compromised position where their base or their leaning off is a problem. And we're looking at Tevin here where he's got that arm fully extended. That's great. But now you're leaning. If that guy wants to give you a hump move or push you off, you're not in position to recover. And I'm telling you this because although I don't remember this exact play, this may be the one where he got blown by, but that's a little bit of an alarming start for me. And as we go here, now see, this is where I'm loving it because we're now seeing Tevin kind of get back, get his base, create some separation. He's actually doing a good job of fighting the hands. If we go back to my Larry Borum talk, something that Larry had a big problem with is getting his hands caught by admittedly elite rushers like Nick Bosa. We're actually seeing Tevin here fight with the hands and get that left wrist. And then also, I mean, it's not clear enough, but it almost looks like Tevin is choking the guy as he's got one wrist. So I like the recovery that we're seeing here. And then sure enough, as we go, he's done a good enough job to stall. I believe 77 is Quentin Jefferson. Quentin Jefferson has had to essentially reset and come up with a new rush move. And as he comes in, here we are, Tevin again's doing a good job of quitting himself. The spin move, Tevin is just still staying in front of him. That's enough there where this is what we talk about. Don't get me wrong. We would all love Quentin Nelson's. And if Tevin Jenkins, and we didn't talk about this with Danny, but I wanted to. I think a lot of people were not happy to see them trade tons of picks to move up and get Tevin after you already did it with Justin. I get it. I agree with it. But if you were to tell me that you got a killer guard at pick 39 and you had to trade up and get him, and we're not even talking Quentin Nelson, give me, as I sit here and try to think of guards, Andrew Norwell, Brandon Scherf, and I know Brandon Scherf is a very high pick. I'm blanking on names here. Will Hernandez, who didn't turn out well. But, I mean, you're talking about guards that have gone in this range. If he becomes a real player there, that I think is still worth it. And you're seeing it where, yes, we would all like top elite talent. But this is something I harped on with Borum for renewables, sitting here speaking my language, 3-dick principle, the 3-dick rule, the rule of 3, as you'll hear me call it. This is what we're hoping for. And it's what I feel with Borum. It's also, I know as Skokes was in here earlier, I know people think I hate Braxton Jones. I don't. But I wish everybody was Trent Williams. But at the end of the day, if you're just doing your job, getting in the way, not being a turnstile, not being a liability, that counts for something. And while my hope, I'll give you just the example of what do I wish it was? I wish Tevin Jenkins was just planting dudes in the dirt every play and he was owning his guy. And sure, that's not what we have here, but you're seeing a situation where he's blocking his guy up and it's no threat to Justin or the play whatsoever. Let's see here. This is the same play. No problem, although I'm just kind of scrubbing through it. Want to make sure that I appreciate it because what you ended up doing is cutting it in slow-mo. So we'll let some of these rolls, people can see it. I'll go through it in slow-mo and then I'll just let it play. Next move here. See, this is what's interesting. And I mean, it's not totally abnormal, but when you're talking about your guard, I love this because this is Tevin saying, I want a battle. I want action. He's jump setting his defender in a way that, I mean, yes, you could see it across the road here with Braxton and everybody else, but just watch this. Watch how eager Tevin is to just explode into his man compared to the other offensive linemen. It's funny. All right, let's watch this. Boom! It's just like almost immediate contact in a way, which is funny because look, I mean, I think 99, it could be wrong, is Al Woods. Al Woods is a monster. He is just a big dude to handle. And I think that's what's funny is if there's an area I have a little bit of concern with Tevin is I don't know where the back is. I don't know how his core strength is. We don't know about any of the workouts he's able to do. He had talked last year about not being able to do traditional back squats. I'd love to know if his back has been cleared to do full core work, strength work to build it up. But you're talking about a guy, him having to man up and go against, as a guard, this is what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to fit those big one-tech, big guys. And this is what we're seeing here where he makes contact and does get pushed off a little bit because you're not going against a pushover. But then, I mean, this is what we're talking about. We talk about zone all the time in having your offensive line wall a guy off. Essentially, look, if I've got a running back, I want the running back to feel comfortable cutting it up off my backside. So if I've got a guy head up and I've got the running back coming on a wide zone left, I need to physically turn my guy. And that's what you see Tevin Jenkins do here, where even with some struggle, watch how he gets his guy turned. And it actually becomes the reason why that block works and that run works as it cuts up right off of his butt. Right? And this is some of Cole Kmet going, hey, move your ass, Tevin. And then, boom, it becomes a situation where, look, Kmet's there to kind of help make sure that he doesn't cut it back. Then they both wall it up, and you've got Herbert running it through. I said, not a wonderful rep, but it doesn't cause for a big concern. That's a big dude that he's going against. So we move along here, and I appreciate Aldo for this because Lord knows Aldo knows how much I love Tevin Jenkins. And if I'm going to give multiple hours to Larry Borum, I got to give it to Tevin Jenkins because this is my if I have a boyfriend on the Chicago Bears, Tevin Jenkins is my boyfriend. So as we go here, as we talk about offense, I just can't. I haven't mentioned this yet. I have to because this is such a beautiful thing that's welcomed in this offense. Nagy did it. I just don't think he did it enough. This is the pre-snap motion damn near every play where you're seeing Luke Getsy motion somebody. And really just so everybody's aware what that does for you is that helps identify whether you're facing man or zone coverage in pass game. It also, what it does is you're hoping to see if you can get any of the defense shifting one way or the other to identify maybe who's hot, who's coming on a blitz. Maybe they're going to ID or show what their pressure package is. You may also be getting a defense flowing one way with your motion, and then you're motioning them back and snapping it as soon as the motion is complete to help gain a body advantage. So I love saying that. You're seeing pre-snap motion, and it's everywhere. It's tight ends, it's receivers. They're motioning from the perimeter out to a closed formation. You see essentially sift blocks running through. It's beautiful here. So as we move along, Tevin Jenkins here in his pass pro. I don't hate it there. I think he was doing okay. And then look, he's IDing that blitz out there. He's trying to fit him up. I think this is the one where he may get blown past. Yeah, and see, this is the issue where 52, and I don't know who that is that Taylor. He's in a situation where he's taking his pass step, and he's got a guy, and this is why offensive line is hard. You're asking your guy to move backwards and somehow defend a guy with a full sprint forwards. And Tevin Jenkins, I would have to say, is fitting this up a little slowly as he's getting there. And you're seeing it here where, look, at this point of contact, Tevin Jenkins is not in a position to win that. He's trying to fit a half a man. And still, though, I think he's doing a good job getting enough of – appreciate it, Aldo, Darrell Taylor. You're seeing Tevin get enough of his face mask in there to impact it. And this is the problem. It's not ideal. It's not great. And I don't even blame Fields for wanting to step up and get the hell out of here because, I mean, you're talking about Borum and Jenkins are essentially sitting in where Fields was, and that would be in his lap with two defenders. And so this isn't a positive play for those guys. But then again, you're also asking your quarterback, who I like to fondly refer to Ferrari Fields, to bail you out, make a play here. And, I mean, if we're going to be negative, you never want to see your offensive lineman on the ground, especially with their defender not under them. And so not an ideal play. I think this was the one really negative play I had for Jenkins here. And if I did want to comment here about one thing, and I promise I'm not trying to shit on Justin Fields, but this is actually the worst play I thought he had today, where he's done such a good job about getting the ball out in time and trying to make sure that there's no negative plays. And I understand the pocket's not clean, but then I need you, Justin, to just either decide to get it out to your check down, throw it away, or if you're going to decide to try to create with your legs, be decisive. And I know it's much easier said than done. Think bullets are flying live around you. But we see him do a good job step up here. So either pitch it to Herbert, who's looking for the ball, or step out to your left where there's clearly a lane. And I get it, he's running, but you're running right into two guys only to back up with that hesitation. And now you're allowing other guys to catch up to you. And he still turns it into a positive. I just think it's a messy play. I guess, I mean, I hear some people talking about Braxton Jones here. I almost should review Braxton Jones because I know people think I'm negative on him. I think if I can give one positive to Braxton Jones, and it's very clear, and I think this is most important, it's very clear that he's not a liability. And if you've heard me, I love my centers. And even I can admit the most important position on your offensive line is your blindside tackle. If you have a left-handed quarterback, that's your right tackle. If you have a right-handed quarterback, such as Justin Fields, that's your left tackle. And Braxton Jones is doing a wonderful job not being a poster for how to get your quarterback killed. And sure, if people want to point out plays where he's burying guys or he's flashing amazing pass pro technique, I would love to be shown that. But I'm not negative on him. I just think he's doing a great job being a steady Eddie, not causing problems. And as a fifth-round pick, that's all you can ask for. As I'm watching here, like, it's funny. I don't mean to turn this into a Braxton Jones talk, but it's funny. You've got Herbert here looking to provide chip help, only to sit there and go, holy shit, this Braxton Jones guy's got him. I guess I could just leave. Now, I guess it's – I mean, to be clear, if we're going to shit on Tevin Jenkins, I'm going to shit on Braxton a little bit here. This is the hard part about football. It's a team sport. We all wish everybody just was absolutely perfect. I think, people want to tell me about how Braxton Jones is so fantastic. My only concern here, and look, it's hard. None of this is easy. We're just talked about the inherent disadvantage of you have your offensive lineman moving backwards while the other side gets a complete advantage. He is giving up enough ground here where I'm a little concerned about, look, I mean, and this is a problem I had with Braxton Jones because he is just so light in the lower half. He's got those skinny legs. I need you to kind of sit your ass low, put some weight in your butt, and anchor. And you're seeing it here where, unfortunately, he's getting bull rushed a little bit when that rush turns from speed to power and is getting driven back into the pocket in a way that, look, as much as Larry Borum and Tevin Jenkins are not contributing to helping, I certainly don't think Fields is feeling comfortable as he's in his lane and no more than 6 inches away is a blue jersey that Braxton Jones is trying to hold up. And so it's not all perfect. But again, as long as you're not getting, you're not having the Fields where his helmet's popping off because he's not identifying a hot blitz and you're holding up just enough, I'm okay with that. And sorry, although I know I'm taking this is my typical standard. You give me a 6-minute video and I turn it into 38 minutes, but I just love reviewing film and talking about it. Okay, moving along here. Oh, this is God damn, that is a fast. Is that actual play? That's no flag? I'm just amazed at how well Darrell Taylor gets off here. Holy smokes. I mean, holy shit. Look at that. Okay, I'll just say a flag. I'm like, holy smokes. Because, I mean, if you remember, one of the things we talked about with Borum is how well he gets off the ball, and it felt like he was studying some Jason Peters. I'm thinking, holy smokes, who's this Taylor guy to beat Borum off? But, I mean, this is a good example, too. I mean, this is what I appreciate Aldo cutting it up for, is even a flag, we can kind of see what this looks like with Tevin, where, I mean, look, it's clearly a flag. He could sit there and say, I don't need to block this up. They'll stop it. But doing a good job. Again, I think we're seeing an issue here where he likes to lock out. And I talk about this a lot. As an offensive lineman, you have to lock out. You're getting some functional strength by sitting there and locking your arms. But what we almost want to do is bench press that defender off of us as we extend, really create a crashing force. And I think that we're often seeing, as I rewind this closely, you'll see we don't totally get that with Jenkins here. Patient, and it's a very fine line game. Look, we want to sit there and try to bait them into making their move first and then punching, but as we're seeing here with Jenkins, there's those hands shooting out, come get me. And the problem is when you do this, where I know you can't see my hands, but they're out here, you're inviting this inside lane for hands to grab your chest, and then I'm just driving you back and pushing you back into your quarterback. And that's really what we're seeing here with the film, where, as we go here, now Quentin Jefferson, 77, is inside Tevin's chest. But I will give him credit. I think the base is nice. I don't think he's caught leaning too much. He's doing a good job then refitting. And this is what we want to see offensive linemen do. When you're getting pushed back, you're almost trying to jump back and get your feet planted. So if you're getting pushed back, take a step where both of your feet are in the air, plant them into the ground, and then try to plant and reestablish footing and leverage lower than the man so that you can get out and dig him out and up. And so that's what you see here with Tevin, where we're watching it. And even though Jefferson gets his hands inside, watch this, where here's that jump and he's trying to reestablish. Now I'd like to see him get lower here. That's the problem, is Jefferson is still lower, which is why he's still getting driven back. But then you've got Mustipher trying to give in and help. Here we are again, hands shooting again, and this is the problem. You shoot those hands, defenders are going to go, great, let me move those out the way so that I can get by you. And we're seeing it looks like Poona Ford here, who's an incredibly hard guy to block. You want to talk about a very unique player. Poona Ford is a defensive lineman who's 5'11". Doesn't get much shorter than him to try and get under. So not an easy task. And then you're seeing him just make slight work with Tevin. Now this is the thing though, and we talk about, he has trouble with speed. I mean, he's doing a hell of a job staying attached and trying to ride his man upfield. It's just a problem where Poona Ford is so quick and gets those hands disengaged just enough to get inside and cross his face. Oops, and I always do that, but let's go here, because I know this is right after it. So we scoot along. And you're seeing him disengage those hands. But that's Tevin doing a good job trying to stay in front of his man, but you're not doing Fields any service there, and that's what Danny and I were talking about, where I appreciate all the schemed-up plays to get him on rollouts and naked boots, but I'd love to see Justin Fields just get an opportunity for one pocket for 4 seconds. Can he just sit there and go from 1 to 2 to 3 without somebody barreling down on him and asking him to move? I know it's the NFL. They get paid too. It's hard. But just once or twice in these 2 preseason games can we just see Justin Fields have a total opportunity to deliver a shot. Okay, moving along here. It's just it's funny because, I mean, if you want to hear me, I tell you that Tevin Jenkins is my boyfriend, but I'm critical about the guys I like because I'm just, the one issue is we're watching the film here live is I'm going through it and I'm saying, God, can you stop letting defenders get their hands into your chest? I want you to make contact first and all that, but do me a favor, stop letting them into your chest where they are making first contact and then you get pushed back. But this, to Tevin's credit, as much as I'm a fan, I want to defend him. The one thing is, as much as he's getting guys shooting their hands into his chest and driving him back, this is why he was drafted where he was. He does a fantastic job recovering. Like, look, that's not great. Their defender's lower than you, establishing leverage. They've got their hands on the inside of your chest. Your hands are trying to fight outwards. That's a losing business model. And then let's see how he adjusts. Finds a way to refit. Let me get some separation, get my hands another chance to refit in. And here's that recovery effort. Well, now he's got his man in a position where I've got you out. And by the way, we're running a play action off of it, so you're not even in the play. There's enough there where we're seeing a scenario that it cleans itself up. And then here we are again where, I mean, boy, that's I'm funny, although, because I haven't seen this. I don't know where we're going, and I'm watching the game live, so I can only watch so many things. And here we're talking about it again where, hey, man, can you stop letting people get into your chest? Because here we see Tevin getting completely pushed back. It's not where you want to be. And this is the problem, is he is too high. The whole thing is, and I've talked about, offensive line play is a pain in the ass. You got to know when to shoot, when to counter their moves. You're moving backwards, they're moving forwards. I get all of that. But we just have to be critical here. This is the NFL where, look, it doesn't get any better than this. And if you're a guy that's picked number 39 overall and you're struggling and we want to put you in at guard, I can't have you always getting guys pushing into your chest. You need to get your ass down and find a way to dig them out. And this is a situation where he's getting bent back and stood up. And then that's what you want to see from 90, which I think is Moan. Yeah, that's Moan. And then, of course, it's a screen. I think this is the bubble screen to Mooney. Okay. I mean, this is what we want to talk about. This is where I can talk all day and night about how the pass pro still has a long ways to go. But when we're talking about run game, I said this guy gets displacement more than almost anybody in the game. And look, this is just that play action boot. And I could talk all day and night about. There's an area that gets the offense I'm a little worried about, is I feel like this is a play that we see in regular season from this style scheme. And I feel like they had to rely on it as kind of their sole way to gain yards if it wasn't a schemed up touch. But as we move along here, you're seeing Tevin get on 99. That's that's not 99. That's 77, which is Quentin Jefferson. And he's sitting there. And look, I mean, it's a fight. It's not easy or fun, but he's finding a way to get his guy out of the picture. I mean, that's the thing, too. Let's not forget. I mean, I want to be clear. This defensive line, this whole team of Seattle is definitely in transition, but they don't have scrubs up front. Woods is a big dude. Moan is a big dude. They're moving to this 3-4 with Sean Desai, Clint Hurt being the defensive line guy. They're in a situation where they've got a lot of space eaters in addition to these real kind of nasty edge players. That's what you need in this Fangio scheme. These guys on the outside that are real heavy-handed and ability to set the edge. And so they don't have a lot of small, skinny guys, and they're in somewhat of a transition. Poona Ford is that very unique player in that way. But you've got Tevin Jenkins going against Brian Moan here, who's number 90. Quentin Jefferson, who's a little bit more like a 3-tech, but he's got some weight and size and athleticism to him too. And then talking about Woods, who is also just a massive man. All right, and then this is a pass set where, I mean, Borum, it's funny here because Borum is able to kind of, this is what we talk about, like, hey, if you have trouble with speed or you're worried about your pass pro, put him inside. Borum is able to give him a little bit of a shoulder. We call this like closing the elevator doors, where Borum's able to sit there and provide some support so that he can't just come across and beat Tevin around the edge. But it's really just there as support, because then Borum does have to get out and take the outside defender, which is 52 Taylor. And so as we see this here, there it is where, look, Tevin, I've done enough to help you. You've got to take him now. And this is the beautiful thing, though. Look, I want Tevin beating the hell out of people, but we also want cohesiveness in this offensive line. And what you're seeing here is that's Borum and Jenkins playing well together. of Bourne going, I got your back. I'm going to hold him long enough, and then I got to go get my guy. It's all you now, Tevin. But we've disrupted his rush plan so much that he's now reverting to plan B, which is I'm going to try this spin move to beat you around the back door because you don't have somebody on your left side, Tevin. And this is Tevin's athleticism as a guy that I still believe can play some tackle, walling it off and going, you can try the spin move, but then this is the beautiful part. You give me your back. You can't defend yourself. And here's the back being given to Tevin. And just watch how he sits now. See, this is the funny part I'm watching. This is why I say Quentin Jefferson's a freaking dog. Still tries the spin move and does get around. And that's where Tevin Jenkins needs to do a better job mirroring him. But look, I mean, this is what we talk about. With the spin move, do I wish he would have punched him in the back, displaced him, not allowed Quentin Jefferson to scrape up over the back? Sure. But even then, with Quentin Jefferson being such a dog and doing the spin move, let's look at the throw here where the ball has just left Fields' hand. I know it's a blur, but 76 is right there in front of Fields. And yes, Jefferson has spanned, but this is Tevin Jenkins still finding a way to recover and trying to mirror where Justin Fields is and keeping his rusher away from him. And this is the play slowed down, so we're going to watch it here. Nice spin by Jefferson, but then look at it. Look, I mean, and we're talking Tevin Jenkins gets beat. He's leaned over, looking bad, but still finds a way to get himself in between to make sure you're not getting a free hit on my guy. And that is the Tevin Jenkins video. So although I appreciate, I know I turned that into a big segment, but hopefully that gives some insight into Tevin Jenkins today and the work that he did. I think, like I said, I think that there's a lot of room for improvement. But let's be clear, there was nothing, and there's no Chris Jones on Seattle, and Seattle looks so disjointed today. It was hard for me to even kind of pick what I could find from this game because I don't think that they came in their best form. And it's not a total shot at Schofield. I've said Chris Jones is a guy that would be considered to be in a Hall of Fame level discussion if he wasn't playing in the same era as Aaron Donald. And so Schofield got shown a really hard rep against Chris Jones. I know Tevin Jenkins didn't have to go against Chris Jones, but I certainly think, just look fair for fair, Tevin Jenkins also didn't let his quarterback get killed by Chris Jones the way that it happened last week. So there's a lot of room to grow, but I really do believe that this is a good opportunity for Tevin Jenkins to start in this new role as right guard, build from it, increase his confidence, build up that pass pro, build up his strength, continue to be their right guard. And I love the idea of Danny was talking about, let's just get Borum out there, right tackle, let the kids play. And if there's an injury or there's something that's going drastically wrong, then sure, you can raise your basement level or floor by putting a guy like Riley Reef in, which admittedly, who knows how that ankle is, who knows how healthy he is, how long he'd last. But I think there's a situation there where you can play him if necessary. So outside of that, I'll touch briefly on offensive scheme. I think it's going to sound negative. I'm not trying to make it sound totally negative, but if I have a general issue with this Bears offense, and something I asked Danny, you were all worried that they're not able to get into the end zone? Not so much, but what I am concerned about, though, and Jonathan Wood, who is a great follow on Twitter, I actually thought he had a good point today. He was talking about the first 8 plays, I think it were, where there was 8 passing plays in this game, as opposed to a lot of run plays last week. Think that there may have been some point of saying, what does Fields look like with Cole Kmet in there and Darnell Mooney? And, we've got Tevin and Borum, and this is a little bit more of what the first team should look like. What does it look like? Does he have a good passing offense? Can the pocket stay clean? But I think the issue that I have to just nitpick at this scheme so far, and it's all very vanilla, is that I feel like we're not seeing this Luke Getsy offense, which, to be very clear, was complimentary last week. I think that you can see the concept stitching together, and I think they make sense. But when you're talking about this scheme and the way it's actually playing out, I don't know if it's receiver help that's needed because guys just aren't getting open. And I'm talking about even into the second, third quarter when you're looking at Simeon or Peterman, where they're almost just airballing plays because the receivers just aren't able to get open. But it feels like every single play, you're trying to just squeeze every ounce of juice out of it. And maybe it's a 3 or 4 yard gain. And you're in this. I mean, look, the good news is it's third and manageable, stay on schedule. Can we make a play when we need it? But it almost feels like in this way, you're having to resort to, I don't want to say designer plays, because screens are plays too. And, bubble screens, and we haven't even seen RPOs or zone reads yet. But the whole idea is that, at least to me, my perspective, RPOs, screens, tight end screens, bubble screens, they threw a screen to Velus Jones. I mean, you saw those today. When we think about the explosive plays, the big one was the Cole Kmet screen. Then you had the Cole Kmet crosser, which we'll talk about in a second, as this is the other issue or part, my nitpick. You talk about the bubble screen to Darnell Mooney, and then you talk about the Velus Jones screen. Those were some of the explosive passing plays. To me, they're plays, they get you offensive production, but those are also somewhat designer. You're not going to make an offense off of asking your quarterback to just dump it off to guys that can run all day, unless maybe you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle who can sit there and just be run after the catch specialists. So that's a little bit concerning to me, that the only real productive explosive plays you can have is when you're getting it out there on a screen in a designer play. And then the other aspect of the designer play is, I mean, anybody that wants to go see it, episode 2, and Aldo did such a good job creating the Bare Necessities playlist on YouTube. If you want to go back to episode 2, very end of the video, I showed the San Francisco offense versus the Colts defense. And it wasn't a great day for the Colts defense in that early drive, but what I did show is that this is real in-game, in-season. We say that we're seeing a vanilla offense. This is like this is where I was talking to Aldo about this before the show. This is 101 wide zone Shanahan scheme. So I'm not saying it's exotic, but I was quite surprised to feel like, look, we're already seeing something that will definitely come up in the NFL season. And it's almost like Luke Getsy's having to rely on this as the only way to really scheme guys open in an effective manner that isn't a schemed up touch play like screens. And what that is that's kind of your counter waggle or your PA naked boot, where we're faking the wide zone, then scrambling or rolling out of the back, having this sift block. And this is, look, maybe I should talk about on chalk or boards here, but this is a very vanilla concept, but it's just the real basic bones. We're faking the wide zone, rolling out of the back door. You usually have a tight end or a low target. This is low, 0 to 5 yards, kind of your check down, if you will, pushing to one side of your half field read. Then you have a mid-level crosser coming back, trying to create conflict if it's a middle of the field close or even middle of the field open. Which safety is going to take it? Can we cross the face of a slot defender or a safety? And then you usually have a shot play. And this, by the way, this isn't rocket science. Every single NFL offense, the way that they're going to structure it is you have your short play, you have your intermediate, and then you have your alert or your shot take. That's really the way that offensive pass plays are scheduled. And so we've seen this 3 or 4 or 5 times where that's the Cole Kmet catch. That's Daz had one of them. It's just this play of let's boot the guy out, use our quarterback and an athlete with his legs, and then can he just read a half-field read of, look, it's either your short, your intermediate, or your shot play, and we're going to create conflict. And I could spend another 3 hours talking about the philosophical views of this offense and how much it really employs a quarterback to be a star versus an offensive play caller being the star play caller, if you will, the guy that's really stirring the drink. And that's a whole multi-hour conversation. But to wrap this long diatribe up, that is a little bit of a concern I have, that outside of these specific designer plays or just this constant spamming of wide zone one play to the wide zone fake rollout, 3-level, sail concept, that's a little bit of the issue I have. So let me stop here as I take a breath, because you hear me talk for what feels like 5 minutes on end. As we had I saw Toby here had a question. Debro averages less than 4 yards at the time of the catch. I think that's the design of a Shanahan offense. Bears look like they're trying to find that guy. Absolutely. Toby, I think you've got a good point here. That's really what I think Debo's kind of his role is can we find a guy that can create some yak in the short field? And look, if you're not going to have that big ball winner in N'Keal Harry or even an ESB or, one of those guys that can take the top off and be a real physical guy for you down the field on shot plays, then you're really left with 2 areas. That's your intermediate slot receiver or your tight end, and then that's your check down or your sift block. And so what you're hoping there is, look, Justin, if for some reason there's a blown coverage, maybe a false start, and you get the free shot play, go for it. But if not, it becomes a 3-read play. You either are going to find conflict at the second level and hit Velus Jones or Cole Kmet the way that you saw it today. That was the second Cole Kmet catch. Or you're going to check it down if you have a defender in your face off of the rollout. And if for some reason you don't have the middle intermediate level crosser or the flat, which is your check down, then take off and try to make 5 or 6 yards with your legs. And I think that is really the kind of the brass tacks, the bare bones of the offense that we're going to see. Did J2K say, did Velas catch a pass? Yeah, I believe he had a screen on the right sideline. That was one of the few plays where, and Aldo, you're saying, no, am I wrong? Yeah, 1 for 4 yards. I thought that he had like a little outside screen that he caught. And that was one of the few plays where I'm like, okay, can we see a little bit more schemed up for this guy in that way? Because I don't think anybody would say Velus Jones was a really refined guy, a route runner, a receiver. But the one thing that's very clear is that Velus Jones is an athletic freak and an explosive athlete. So get the ball in his hands and see what magic you can make. That's the whole idea. Is if you have these guys like Velus who are return specialists, it's generally the same concept. Let's get the ball in their hands with a wall of guys ahead of them and see what magic they can make. And so I think that's what you're seeing. As we move along, let's go through here. Swanky had a really good question. Justin could be on the move a lot with this offensive line. Will this stunt his growth and development throwing in the pocket long term? Although I know we're officially past the midnight mark, so I'll try to wrap this up soon. But Swanky kind of hit me right where it hurts. For this has just been on my mind a lot today, and it's just kind of been, this is the machinations and ideations of what goes on in my head related to football. And I can't help but talk about it, and I'll make sure it's not a 3-hour topic. But with respect to this offense, and I'm going to poo-poo it a little bit, but I want to make sure it's not seen as some issue where it's not going to work. Look, we're seeing this offense permeate throughout the entire league, so obviously it works. But it's a situation that I have that I can't help but look at this offense. And just going through the list, look, I mean, we're going to see what happens with Trey Lance. That's the whole point of Trey Lance. He's the first guy outside of Robert Griffin where we've seen the godfather of this scheme, whether it be actually Mike or Kyle in this case, Kyle in the modern era, Mike in the previous, where they're getting to pick their guy, their selected quarterback, and see what it looks like. And with Robert Griffin, that first year looked amazing. We didn't get to see it after that because of the knee. We're going to see what Trey Lance looks like this year. But the general idea that I have philosophically with this offense that bothers me a little bit is that when you look at the history of quarterbacks they've had, Matt Ryan, Matt Schaub, Jimmy Garoppolo, Nick Mullins, CJ Beathard, we can go down the list. They're not guys that typically are all-star athletes or amazing quarterbacks. Matt Ryan, of course, all respect to him, but we're talking about like truly game-changing Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, I mean, even Tom Brady, Russell Wilson. And the reason I'm saying is just so you don't think it's an athletic barrier. We're talking about guys that truly can operate and elevate an offense independent of scheme, that you could split them out and empty, and they're able to set their protection and make the audibles and checks Peyton Manning style. And the reality here is that my opinion is that this offensive scheme, to Swanky's question, is all about letting the play caller be the star of the show. Hey, quarterback, just listen to what I'm telling you, make the right reads, stay on schedule. I'm the mastermind here. You play. You're just my chess piece, and I'll make the rest work. And that's fine. But at a certain point, to Swanky's question, does this hinder or stunt the growth or development of your quarterback playing individually, understanding how to set his protections, how to play within the structure of a pocket and not get too anxious and try to bounce out, not always looking for half field reads and easy plays where, look, we're scheming up touches for guys. And look, the reality is we're going to see what that looks like. We're going to see if this does, Swanky, to your point, interrupt Justin Fields' development 2-3 years down the road. And is he going to become dependent on this scheme and that's the only way he knows how to operate? Or is this just, and I'll give credit to this with Luke Getsy and Eberflus and this staff, if there's one thing that I think is beautiful about this scheme, especially this year above them all, is that this scheme lends itself to quarterbacks that may be hindered for a variety of issues, whether that be surrounding talent, receiving options, maybe not the best reader of defenses. Let's give them easier times to play. I think they may be putting some training wheels on Justin Fields for a much simpler term. And this 1 to 2 year period while he does incubate and develop. And so this is the part where I'm saying we're going to see if this hinders him or if it's just truly a set of training wheels. And in 2 to 3 years, is he a guy that can play independent of this scheme? And this is an aspect of the scheme, but also he can operate the Nagy offense. And I know everybody sees that as a cancer, but look, I'm talking about the Nagy offense, the Joe Burrow LSU offense, where look, we're going to run empty and you're going to have to read it out. Russell Wilson plays this way where we're going from 1 to 2 to 3 pure progression reads and ensuring that you're setting the protection and we're not having to bail out the offensive line or you with half field reads and booting, getting the defensive line off base for their rush. And so I think that Swanky, it's a great question. I would love to tell you I'm some Nostradamus that can figure out exactly how that's going to affect his development. I will tell you on a personal level, I'm not a fan of this whole idea that the play caller is the star and that the quarterback just does what the play caller says and he just operates the system. But yeah, and I'm laughing here because Russell's saying, am I related to, I take it that's Draft Dr. Phil. Who the fuck can talk that much? You got, if it's your first time, Russell, you're going to learn because I go for 4.5 hours on a clip if people don't shut me the hell up. So this is my crazy brain where I'm sitting here. This is the shit I think about as I'm sitting on the toilet or doing whatever else, where I'm just thinking about what is this offensive scheme? How does it affect your quarterback's development? Is it a good thing that the play caller is the one that's really getting all the shine, or should we be asking our quarterbacks to be a little more independent? I don't know. It's just kind of who I am. And so if you don't like it, no problem. Don't do anything. Hang out, leave, do whatever you want. And if you like it, I'm here doing it regularly. Did Eduardo Miguel, did Sanborn do enough to earn a spot? I think he absolutely did. I think he, look, you don't have a game like you did last week and not earn a spot. As I was talking to Danny about, I think it's more important now than ever because you're talking about his position that's been somewhat ravaged by injuries with Matthew Adams and Caleb Johnson. Roquan Smith is out. And I put it in my little 10 takeaways today that I actually, don't get me wrong, Jack Sanborn was awesome last week. But I actually took an appreciation for how he played today because to me it looked much more like this Jack Sanborn that I saw at Wisconsin. A guy that was playing within the scheme of, you've got the scenario of JoJo Doman and Leo Chanel, and we're asking Jack Sanborn to be the glue guy to essentially let those guys go wild and use their athletic ability. And Sanborn just kind of ties it all together and makes sure that no bad plays occur. And I think you saw that today. He was a good player in fitting the run. They mugged him up in the A-gap and asked him to drop into short hook zones. I think in a limited role as a spot starter, a guy that comes in occasionally to do the basics, he absolutely is that guy. And I think that they found a player that can obviously contribute on special teams, which is where he's going to make his money. And then do that spot starting work. So, yes, I do think he earned a spot. So I guess I'll be very quick here, as I know Aldo's saying final questions for me. If you have any questions, go ahead and submit them, and Aldo will pick them out, and we'll talk about them. But very quick, Hard Knocks this week. I actually thought, although I don't know if you got to see it yet, you probably didn't, but general takeaways, Malcolm Rodriguez, 6th-round pick out of, funny enough, Oklahoma State, Tevin Jenkins as well. They played there together. Very small 5'11" linebacker. If you want to hear about kind of my issue with Roquan Smith, I've often talked about, I don't think he fits the run well enough. If you want to see what kind of gets my blood and juices flowing, and Aldo talks about the production value, there was just such a great segment on Malcolm Rodriguez this week, and Kelvin Shepard actually lambasting some of the veterans saying, are you really going to let this 6th rounder take your job, take your spot because of how well he's performing in training camp? And look, it's one thing for the cameras to catch it and talk about this coach that's lambasting his veterans. It's another thing, and I take some pride in this. This is me as a film guy, and they're showing the film of him fitting the run, scraping over the top on blockers, filling the run and filling the gaps. And I'm watching it just going, wow, this is a great pickup in the 6th round. And but also, if I have to give a little shit, Don, if you come around to seeing this, the Lions are the Lions, which means that when they play in a preseason game, and they have the game locked up and ready to go, they still find a way to have their backup quarterback fumble and muffle the snap and give the ball back to the Falcons for my QB1 of the last draft class, Desmond Ridder, to go down and lead them to a game-winning touchdown. And so the Lions take an L in their preseason as the Bears are 2-0. but still a very entertaining episode with the Lions. Okay, so that is my little Hard Knocks deal. And as we kind of go through some of the questions here, Cliff is saying, still waiting to see the Jordan and Don Burr battle. I hate to tell you guys, but I don't think that'll happen because, as Toe is saying, Don Burr is indeed a coward. I've asked him to come on here. And Don, if you hear this, I'm dead serious, and Aldo could back me up here. I'm not into, I don't want to sit here and roast you, or I'm not going to set you up to fail. I legitimately just want to be able to talk. As an NFL fan, I would love to talk Lions with a Lions fan and talk about a show that I would absolutely kill for Hard Knocks to cover the Bears. I think, look, it's in the best interest of the NFL, and this is why they make even a team as dysfunctional as the Lions, they give a random NFL fan excitement of what they're building there in Detroit. I can only imagine what great light they would shine in the Chicago Bears if they covered them. And so if there's an opportunity for me to talk Lions with a Lions fan like Don Burr, I wish, but he's a coward. He runs from every invite with emails and doesn't want to be on the show, so I can't control that. Moving along, what's your biggest worry with the Bears offense, O-line, wide receivers? Easily to me, it's the offensive line. I talked about it earlier. I think a quarterback can elevate the receiving talent. I don't think the receiving talent is great, but I trust Justin Fields to be able to find and hit Darnell Mooney or Cole Kmet or Velus Jones, but I need him to have enough time. And I can't have him scrambling out of the pocket because he can't sit there and go through his reads. So Toby asked me last week, so I asked you, do I anticipate the Bears signing anyone significant before the end of preseason? That is hard. We don't know who is available. To give you an example, Travis Fulgham got picked up by the Packers, but he's a guy that had 500 yards in his best season with Philadelphia when they didn't have anything for Carson Wentz to use. He was a decent deep threat. I didn't feel like, and this goes to all wide receivers, just so we're clear, because I know that's one where everybody's like, well, they pick up a wide receiver. I don't find a way I can't see a way for a wide receiver to come in this late into the program and all of a sudden understand and pick up route timing, tempo, spacing, playbook, chemistry, all of those factors in week 3 of the preseason with 1 week before the regular season to somehow be able to contribute in any meaningful way. And as much as offensive line sounds like it'd be a little more simple, the reality is that your offensive line has to take time to gel and build that chemistry. And I already have a little bit of an issue of the fact that, look, we've got this offensive line GM and the assistant GM who played offensive line. This was a thing that if I had to guess on one area they would have figured out well before the second week of the preseason, it would have been the offensive line, and we're still shuffling around pieces. I don't think you can add an offensive lineman to that situation and expect them to make a real contribution. So at this point, as far as the signing anybody significant, I guess I would say it's the defensive side. And the very clear ones to me are either 3-tech or linebacker. And I suppose they could come in, but there's some of that too, where you're guiding a guy off the street and asking him to all of a sudden understand loafing, hits, playing to the whistle, understanding the culture, fitting in. It's a very hard ask. So I really tend to think, Toby, that this team is going to roll into it with a lot of their guys being their guys. And if anything, we're going to see some of the bottom swapped out for other bottom pieces. And it may just be a simple, look, we had one too many speed guys. Let's get a bigger frame in here. Hey, we got a guy that, maybe we feel like we're lacking in gunner. So we're going to bring a gunner in and swap out a linebacker who's maybe playing closer to the line on punt protection. So I think that those are some of the areas you would see change. Gibson played a lot this game, thought that was odd. Kamara played well, but I don't see the explosive hurt. But yeah, Kamara had what's funny is I talked about this a little bit. I got shit on a little bit because I was telling Bears fans, hey, if you want to see some good tackle play, watch Charles Cross tonight and Abraham Lucas, because as a guy that was watching the film, Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas looked phenomenal against Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh last week, and they stunk up the joint today. The whole Seahawks offense looked like crap. Kamara had a sack on third-round pick Abraham Lucas out of Washington State and actually did a good job bending the curve of the arc. I actually thought that Kamara would have been a good 3-tech option, but they've stuck to playing him as an edge on the end. And we're seeing a little bit there. Jeremy, to your point, I've actually been expecting a lot out of Charles Snowden, and he's done okay, but there hasn't been a lot of pop there. And even a guy like Dominic Robinson didn't have any splash plays tonight. So to the point of me talking about 3-tech and Mike, I also am curious to see what this defensive line looks like, because I do think Travis Gibson, who was actually out there playing quite a bit. With Travis Gibson and Robert Quinn, you would expect to see some more pressure. I didn't think that was so prevalent tonight. Okay, so let's kind of go through here quickly as we want to get Aldo and everybody out of here. I know it's late. All right. Aldo, unless I'm wrong, do we have any other question? I think that's it. What does Domber do when the Lions win the Super Bowl? He shuts off the PlayStation. Yeah, because he's clearly playing Madden. Okay. Well, gentlemen, barflies, everybody involved, I appreciate you all hanging out. I wasn't trying to go through another 4.5-hour stream as I've already gone damn near 2 hours here. So everybody, I'd like you all to have a wonderful evening. I hope you all enjoyed some Bears football. And as Aldo comes in, any final words you have, Aldo, before we get out of here?
Yeah, Jordan, I want you to think of this, Bare Necessities, as your laboratory. All right.
Okay.
And so I love what you're doing. You know, you've tried different things, different ways to communicate, and everything that you have done has been of great interest to our followers. I'm getting private messages. Wow, you really got a good one in Jordan. And they're public messages complimenting you. And so I want to compliment you publicly and also say, this is your laboratory. So play around with it, have some fun with it, experiment all you want. Once the regular season starts, we've got our Bear Football immediate after game show. And if you want to come on at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock East Central, whatever time you want, and talk football, this is your laboratory. You do with it what you want. Okay, brother?
You're the best, Aldo. This is why I cannot thank you enough sincerely for allowing me to voice my opinion and have my lab, if you will, on Barroom Network. There's no better place to do it. And this has been joyful tonight, and I appreciate you directing, doing such a good job stringing the clips together, and it's just been wonderful.
It's been fun. Take care, brother.
Yes, you too. Well, gentlemen, barflies, thank you for hanging out. If you're interested at all in contributing to Bear Necessities, as Aldo said, this is the lab. Jackpot2123. That's my email. There's no Bears Necessities. Look, I'm as easy to get a hold of as you want. Shitty takes on Twitter and all. You can come at me. You can message me. Jordan T. Silveira on Twitter, jackpot2123 at Gmail, just as it sounds, if you want to contribute in any way. And if not, I will see you all next week, 8 p.m. Central Thursdays. We may eventually move it to Saturday because I also like to watch NFL games and Thursday night games, and I want to watch those and not be rushed to do this. So we will figure it out. But guess what? We are 1 week closer. We are inching to meaningful football. And I'm excited to go on this journey with you all. So Barflies, have a wonderful night and bear down. Thank you, everybody.